The name Ashkenazi derives from the biblical figure of Ashkenaz, who was the first son of Gomer, son of Japhet, and Japhet was one of the three sons of Noah. Japhet's tribe is considered to be the progenitor of European and later East Asian peoples. In other words, Indo-European or Aryans. Japhet is also equated with the Greek titan Ipetos, mentioned by Homer, the ancestor of the Hellenic people, named after Helen of Troy, whose bloodline was considered sacred, which I recently covered in a video about Mary and skull symbology. In the 7th century, Isidore of Seville, who is often regarded as the last scholar of the ancient world, published his noted history, in which he traces the origins of most of the nations of Europe back to Japhet. In Scotland, histories tracing the Scottish people to Japhet were also widely published. I have another video linked in the description about how Scotland got its name. Princess Scotta, ancestor of the Gaels, was also known as Meritaten, a daughter of King Akhenaten and Queen Nefertiti, and sister of King Tut, who were all part of the Hyksos dynasty of Egypt. In Egyptian, Hyksos means foreign rulers, and they introduced the horse, chariot, and bronze medal to the African continent, as well as Aten worship, which is considered the first form of monotheism, meaning the belief in one God, which in this case is symbolized by the sun. Josephus calls them the shepherd kings, and anthropologically speaking, they entered Egypt via the Middle East, starting from Anatolia. So now things should start falling into place, as the Scythians were blonde and red-haired and had blue eyes, just like many of the Egyptian statues, and a phenotype common in Scotland and Ireland. The Ashkenazi Jews also predominantly have fair hair and light eyes. In Islamic tradition, 36 languages of the world could be traced back to Japhet, and he's usually regarded as the ancestor of the Gog and Magog tribes, and at times of the Turks, Khazars, Illyrians, Dacians, and Eastern Europeans around the Ukraine. That said, many of the last Scythians were absorbed into what today are called Slavic people, who are also fair-haired with light eyes. The Polish can also claim descent from the ancient Iranian Sarmatians, part of the wider Scythian cultures, making up the dominant Baroque culture and ideology of the nobility that existed in the times of the Renaissance to the 18th centuries, that also extended into Ukraine and Russia, which is why Russian money from pre-communist times boldly bears Aryan symbology prominently in the middle of the currency. As I've stated several times before, the Prophet Muhammad himself had red hair, which brings us to the Khazars. When one looks at a map of Indo-European or Aryan expansions and compares it to a map of the Khazarian Empire, the similarities should speak for itself. The same geographic area attributed to Ashkenazis as they're ethnically one and the same. I'll also include a link in the description to a prior video I did about the Templars, a German sect that settled Haifa a century before Israel's independence, which today is largely populated by Germanic Ashkenazi people whose ancestors arrived on nationalist socialist ships from 1933 to 1939 in a secret agreement that is historically factual, even if no longer publicized.
I lived in Palestine from 1933 to 1936, and we saw every week transports of German Jews coming to settle in Palestine.
German Jewish settlement of Palestine was, for a time, official Nazi policy. These photos of Jewish life in Palestine, along with a lengthy text, appeared in 1934 in the Berlin paper Der Angriff. A Nazi Visits Palestine was the title of the multi-part series. A medal was struck by Goebbels in commemoration. On one side, the swastika. On the other, the Star of David.
These same Indo-European Aryans, who were the Hyksos pharaohs, were not only linked to the Phoenicians, which means red, but were also the Knights Templar, the people who conducted the Crusades, which were a series of wars by Europeans to recover the Holy Land from Muslims in the 11th, 12th, and 13th centuries, and carved stone churches out of rock in Lalibela, Ethiopia, including swastikas and Star of David, or Steel of Solomon if you prefer, symbols with a Templar cross in the middle of it. It has also been suggested by many authors, such as Sigmund Freud in his book Moses and Monotheism, that Moses was actually born into an Egyptian household rather than being born as a slave and merely raised in the Egyptian royal household, and was himself royalty, with many others also concluding that the noble bloodlines of the biblical Israelites were synonymous with the Hyksos pharaohs, both associated with serpent symbolism, which ties into the legend of Saint Patrick, who drove the snakes out of Ireland, since Ireland never had snakes during the entire Holocene, and before that was covered by a mile of ice. So it's clear the snakes represented pagans, which is another way of saying Druids. The Druids were the Scythian royalty, and this bloodline were also known as dragons, and are symbolically portrayed as a dragon or serpent in many European myths and legends. This dragon symbolism can be seen in Transylvania, where we find Dracula, which translates into dragon, who incidentally Prince Charles claims he's genetically related to.
Claims.
As for the Druids, their kings were called Pendragons, as they were in the Middle East, and can be traced back to Anatolia, where they were also the Proto-Sumerian ancestors venerated by the Germanic secret societies, such as the Vril and Thule Society, and who also left mummified remains in China known as the Tocharians, near massive pyramids in China, which are either ignored or purposely hidden by the communist Chinese government, who know the truth of where their first emperors, swastikas, and dragon symbolism really stems from, not to mention Buddhism itself. This royal bloodline was also known as fairy royalty. So not only were the Druids or dragon kings Scythians from Aryan Anatolia, the same Aryan tribes that introduced the thunder god Thor and his hammer to Europe, which is named after Europa, a Phoenician princess, but also the Saxons or Anglo-Saxons, as well as the Getai, meaning goat in Swedish, which were also the Thracian tribes that once inhabited the regions to either side of the lower Danube, in what is today northern Bulgaria and southern Romania, sharing affinities with the Goths, which are the German tribes of northern and eastern Europe, as well as the Guti of Mesopotamia, and becoming the mighty Kush Empire in India. Now let's look at a quote by Lawrence Gardner from his book, Realm of the Ring Lords, The Myth and Magic of the Grail Quest. Quote, the Tuatha De Danann were the Black Sea princes of Scythia. Like the original dynastic pharaohs, they traced their descent from the great Pendragons of Mesopotamia. From them sprang the kingly lines of the Irish, Brutni, and the Picts of Scotland, Caledonia. In Wales, they founded the royal house of Gwynedd, while in Cornwall, in the southwest of England, they were the sacred gentry known as Picts. So from a single cast of the original blood royal, whether known as the Sangreal, the Albigens, or the Ring Lords, we discover many of the descriptive terms which sit at the very heart of popular folklore. For here, in this one noble race, we have the elves, fairies, and pixies, not beguiling little folk, but distinguished kings and queens of the dragon succession. So in closing, I'll remind my subscribers that regardless of any post-World War II propaganda, including films by Steven Spielberg and other Hollywood moguls who are not historians or anthropologists, but globalists with political agenda, the swastika symbol and star known as the Seal of Solomon or David are found side by side in antiquity, such as the archaeological ruins of the Temple of Jupiter in the Phoenician city of Baalbek, which incidentally, Japhet is where we get the modern English spelling for Jupiter, who in Christianity is Saint Peter, the serpent culture stretching from Ireland to India and even deeper into the Far East, Asia and Japan. But that'll be left for another time when I tie this in with ancient Aryan presence in the New World, which is not really new at all, and whose entire history, as taught in modern academia, has been corrupted and falsified, as America was not named after Amerigo Vespucci, but after Amarica, an Incan word which is literally translated into land of the plumed serpent,
Land of
Another
the
way of
plumed
saying
serpent.
winged serpent. The symbol etched
Zoroastrianism,
into
right
the
there in the
ancient
bottom
stone
left.
of Egypt and Mesopotamia. Thank you for listening. My name is Robert Sepper. I'm an anthropologist. My published work is available on Amazon. My books make a great gift. If you'd like to support my work,
I'm
you can do
gifting
that through
myself these
patreon.com.
books.
There should be a link in the description section for those who are interested. I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Please hit the like button and subscribe for future updates. As always, I look forward to reading your thoughts, so please leave a comment below. Have a wonderful weekend, and I hope to see you again soon.